it has been a turbulent week for tech companies all over, but I do specifically want to talk about Meta, the parent company of WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram. So they had confirmed on Wednesday mass layoffs. Can you walk us through how we got here?
Yeah, so Meta had their third quarter earnings report come out, I believe it was last week, and just company losses were not great. I cover very much their metaverse division, so Reality Labs, and what was clear there is the company was spending way too much money on a Reality Labs division that wasn't giving them enough revenue. The company operated at a $9.7 billion loss since the beginning of the year, and it's something around 12 billion since the company announced its name change from Facebook to Meta. And so, investors were really concerned that Mark Zuckerberg was taking too much of a long-term view and not really focusing on the short-term revenue profits. And what we're seeing, this 13% layoff is huge for the company, but it's something that, is kind of expected. He did go out and say he was sorry and took responsibility for it and apologized. But, it's part of a, I think, larger trend of tech instability. Their advertising revenue is down, and macroeconomic, turns are already hurting the advertising sector. And if the company is not spending enough time or money or resources into it, there's a lot of concern from investors and analysts saying like this isn't the right way to go.
I want to talk more about what Mark Zuckerberg said was his decision behind this. What did he say during this announcement?
Yeah, so I think he pretty much alluded to, macroeconomic downturns. The company was not doing so well, spending too much money. The costs or the cuts largely come from the business division. And so it seems that they're going to be cutting down a little bit of partnerships, even though, again, on the Reality Labs side, they announced this huge partnership with Microsoft and Zoom in terms of bringing the metaverse to the office. And so it's interesting how it's going to be restructuring. The development teams are going to be consolidated. There's going to be some restructuring going on in terms of engineering and product. So I think what the company is trying to do is really reevaluate, what are its priorities and how do you focus your labor on it? I think marketing is also down in terms of layoffs and employees. And so it was a big cut across the company. You've seen videos on TikTok and Instagram and LinkedIn posts of employees just saying, I've been hit by the layoffs. The tech industry doesn't seem to be hiring. There's rumors about Twitter's potentially filing bankruptcy. So it's a turbulent time in the tech world, I would say. It'll be interesting how the end of the year comes in terms of, employee headcount. What's interesting, I will say, though, is, Meta is taking a very, I think, conservative, or not conservative, it's been very hit by its metaverse developments, and that's largely what I cover. This long-term view, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You
yeah, its long-term view towards the metaverse didn't really, I would say, pay off. They're spending way too much money on R&D and building these Quest headsets for exuberant price tags. I believe it's $1,500 a piece compared to the $500 a piece that was before. But you have another metaverse company, Roblox, who also seems to be taking the long-term view. Revenues are also not down. They announced earnings this week. But investors are much happier with that. For some reason, Roblox has been doing it a little bit better than Meta when it comes to its metaverse developments.
Yeah, I want to talk about the relationship here between investors and the company's vision for the metaverse. You've reported on this extensively, that the disconnect between investors and Mark Zuckerberg's insistence on the metaverse. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so I think Mark Zuckerberg, went on this keynote speech. Meta has their big Connect conference, which, it's touted the State of the Union for the company every year. That's where they announced the name change last year. And he called, their metaverse work some of the most historic work they've done. That, I think, for me signifies that, he's really committed to this, whether investors like it or not. And it's very much seeming that they don't like it. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. He definitely, I think, wants to keep some sort of the metaverse arm and Reality Labs open. The cuts didn't necessarily specify, within the larger sectors what family. So you have the family of apps where you have Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp under, and then Reality Labs. I didn't see much about like what specific teams were affected the most, but I think, Zuckerberg is sticking down and saying the metaverse will happen. Investors are kind of asking him and begging him to a degree to, if it'll happen, to allocate less of their, resources towards it and focus more on the core advertising. But we'll see. Yeah, overall, investors are not too happy with that.
Do you think investors are happy with the layoffs at all?
I mean, the stock price is up today. And so I think it's after what for many was very like irresponsible behavior in the earnings report. And you've seen all the coverage of it, not a lot of people wanted Zuckerberg to go the way he was going or like keep doing what he was doing. And so I think for a lot of investors, the layoffs seem like a more reasonable way to go and say, okay, we have to cut costs somewhere. It's unfortunate that it has to come at the expense of, I think it's 11,000 layoffs, which is, or 11,000 jobs that were cut. But the price seems to be reacting positively to it. It hit, I believe, a low of like 93 a share at the end of last year, and today it's at about 113. And so there is some, I think, reassurance coming from that.
And do you think this will make him pivot at all? And is this his almost come to Jesus moment where he is going to say, the metaverse might not be working, let me pivot to something else? Or is he all in still?
I think he wants to have some sort of metaverse initiative, but not yet. I think what he's really betting on is Quest Pro sales. Historically, the quarter 4 has been very well for those because of the holiday season and just, end of year purchases. So we'll see. We'll see if that pulls through in terms of sales to kind of keep the dream of the metaverse alive. I think that's where they're putting the most money. It's, the VR headsets. I do think that he's gonna, if he wants to keep the company at some sort of a, stable level, he's gonna have to step back his level of investment and just focus a little bit more on the advertising or figure out a way to get short-term like revenue on that division.
You mentioned that Meta wasn't the only tech company in recent time to have these cuts. Why are tech companies having to lay people off recently?
It's a combination of things, macroeconomic downturns. A lot of these tech companies are, heavily based on advertising, and the advertising sector is down this year, as almost everything is. And so it's a combination of factors. I think the other big, social media tech company is Twitter, and the whole drama over Elon Musk buying it and going private, and him having effective like sole control of the company is also hitting hard. And so just from a social media standpoint, I don't think there's a lot of confidence as to what the future can be. And so we'll see. I would hesitate to speculate more than that, but I think overall it's a lot of macroeconomic downturns and then a hit on the advertising industry or sector.